Hello and welcome. My name is Tania Johnson. I'm a registered psychologist, registered play therapist, co-founder of the Institute of Child Psychology. Today, we're going to be chatting about smartphones and kids. In my own clinical practice, this is a question that comes up all of the time. When do I give my child a smartphone, and how do I navigate those inevitable landmines? Let's start off by reading a really interesting letter that Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla wrote to their daughter before she was born. You will be busier when you're older, so I hope you take time to smell all the flowers and put all the leaves you want in the bucket now. I hope you read all your favorite Dr. Seuss books so many times you start inventing your own stories about the Vipera Vip. I hope you ride the carousel with Max until you've tamed every color horse. I hope you run as many laps around our living room and yard as you want. And then I hope you take lots of naps. I hope you are a great sleeper. And I hope, even in your dreams, you can feel how much we love you. Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan. As a mama to two little girls, one who's nearly 9 and one who's 6, many of my dreams are similar. I want a slow childhood that's imbued with magic and joy and books and sleep. The reality is, though, when we give a child a smartphone, we open up a Pandora's box. One of the most interesting studies that I've read recently was one by Common Sense Media, Constant Companion, a week in the life of a young person's smartphone use. This study was really different because instead of having kids self-report on their use of their phone or having parents report on the kids' use, they actually used software on children and youth's phones to see what they were doing over a week. And what they found was that on average, kids were using their phones for about 4.5, 5 hours a day, that they received, get this, 236 notifications a day. A quarter of those notifications were during the school day, 5% were at night, later on at night. Out of those 236 notifications, they attended to about 46 of those notifications. For kids under the age of 13, so the study took into account kids who were aged 11 to 18. For kids who were under the age of 13, there were 85 of them. Many of them were using apps like TikTok already. Out of all of the participants, 45% of those participants were using adult sites like Pornhub or like Reddit. About 2/3 of the participants said that they sometimes or often use their phone to numb out when they feel lonely or sad, and that their phone often stops them from sleeping at night. So I think everybody who hears all of this probably steps back and says, no way, my child is not getting a phone. And when we look a little bit further into Jonathan Haidt's work with the anxious generation, we probably step even further back into that. Let's quickly talk about the 4 foundational harms that Jonathan has identified. He summarizes it beautifully in his book. It's probably my favorite book that I've read more recently. And then let's talk about what we can actually do as parents. So the first harm that he identifies is social deprivation. I want you to think a little bit about a baby. When a baby is playing peekaboo, they go, ooh, we go, ooh. It's a back and forth. There's a serve and return, a serve and return. Serve and return is at the base of all solid relationships. As our kids get older and they come home, we say, hey, how was school? And they say, oh, Mom, today was really hard at school. And we say, what happened? That's a serve and return right there. Eventually, they start serving and returning with their own friends. Those friendships become a ground for them to learn how to really be human. What does it mean to really, really adore a friend and then have a friend choose a new friend? What does it mean to be vulnerable with another person? What does it mean to really say sorry and to stay in that awkward moment and really look into somebody's eyes and go, I messed up? Many of our children are now missing that serve and return process. It's almost as if they serve and it hits a wall. There's no return coming back. Very often, when our children's smartphone use becomes excessive, we see that it starts to impact their social aptitude. Loneliness is at the core of many, many, many psychological issues. And we know that children who spend more time on social media are more likely to feel lonely. The more time we spend on social media, the higher our risk for anxiety and depression too. And the last little thing here, as we talk about social connections, social awareness, is the stages of play. As a play therapist, I'm deeply passionate about the importance of play. Play provides a learning ground for how to be in the world, how to experience the world. Play is a child's language. It's how they process the emotions, how they come to understand their emotions, how they work through feelings, how they develop competency and confidence, how we start to connect with others over time. More and more and more, we're seeing that children are playing less and less and less. We also know from the research that children, as they get older, are doing less. They're interacting less with friends outside of school. They're involved in less part-time jobs, less volunteer opportunities, and they're spending more time alone. So that's a social deprivation. Sleep deprivation, anybody who hasn't had a good night's sleep knows how they feel. But what happens when it's night after night after night? Many of us are aware of the impact of blue light on melatonin production. When we go to sleep with a device in our hand, it not only interferes with our ability to fall asleep, but to stay asleep and sleep well. When our children don't sleep well, they're at a much higher risk for behavioral issues and then also internalizing issues like anxiety and depression. Depression is an interesting one. We can actually trace months of subpar sleep before somebody has their first major depressive episode. That's our sleep. Our next one would be attention fragmentation. The average that a person now pays attention for is 47 seconds. Attention is interesting. It's highly malleable, highly dependent on what's happening in the environment. The ability to multitask is a myth. We have limited ability to process, store, and encode information. Our ability to pay attention really is the foundation for growth, for learning, for cognitive development. This thing about what happens when we give a phone. Suddenly our kids have notifications, 46, that they're attending to. And that's a limited amount of the notifications that are coming in to their phone. How do they ever stay still, think, immerse themselves deeply? It's like being on a jet ski versus deep sea diving, that deep immersion. The other fascinating thing is that very often children's social media use spikes at around 11, 12, 13. We see more and more kids starting to use social media. This is also the time that we see immense neurological growth. So it happens when we're really little. Till about 5, there's lots going on with the brain. And then there's still things happening, but it slows down somewhat between 6 and those puberty years. At puberty, so again, 11, 12-ish, we see this massive neuronal burst of activity again. And then the activities that our children engage in again and again and again will determine how their brain is wired. So what happens when our kids are spending on average 5 hours? Our teens actually shows that they're spending about 9 hours on their phone. It absolutely impacts the architecture of the brain. Okay, so we've done social, we've done sleep, we've done attention. The last one that we want to look at is addiction. We saw how many of our kids, 2/3 of the participants in that study, are numbing out on little handheld computers, on those smartphones. Feeling lonely? Numb out. Feeling sad? Numb out. These little dopamine-giving devices stop them from having to truly feel their feelings until one day they have to. We know as adults how hard it is to put those phones down. How designers have made these phones impossible to put down. Keep scrolling, auto start a new video. If we find it difficult, how do our children ever resist? So those are the 4 foundational harms that we want to be aware of. And so what are the answers? What do our children need instead? In order for our children to develop beautifully, they need ample time to engage in childhood. They need to play. They need independent play. They need to be able to move their bodies outside as much as possible. They need deep connections with their parents, with their peers, and they need to feel what true passion is like. What does it mean to love dinosaurs? What does it mean to love looking at snails? What does it mean to be truly excited about building that fort?
That's what they need. And as they start to move towards the age where phones make more sense for them, there's wonderful organizations in the States, Wait Until 8th in Canada. Unplug Canada has lots of guidance around helping our children as they start to move, delaying smartphone use, delaying social media use, so we can start to develop communities of parents who are saying childhood first. But as we start to bridge that gap, we want to be aware of a few things. Relationship is always going to be stronger than parental controls. Sit down and have those hard conversations with your child before you give them a phone. Jessica Jill Alexander has a new program called Raising Digital Citizens, which is absolutely fabulous. It helps you to walk through all of those difficult questions. The next thing that we want to do is be aware of our own cell phone use. So often we have all of these things that we're demanding from our kids. But I can tell you right now that if you are going to bed every single night with your phone, your child, maybe not initially because we'll have those strict rules, will eventually probably do exactly what you're doing. We cannot preach what we're not living with our kids. So move the focus from your child to a whole family approach. Keep involved with what they're doing. Ask them about the apps that they're using. Ask them about their games. Be genuinely interested. Be curious. When we step into their world, we're less likely to be pushed away. And very importantly, let your child know that if they're ever in trouble online, if something happens that's frightening or tricky, that they will not be in trouble with you. Children often hold what's happened to them for a long time, way too long, because of the fear of getting into trouble with their parents. Relationship is the most important tool that you have as you navigate this digital landscape.